The ICU corridor stopped breathing. Nurses froze with clipboards half raised a transport gurney, halted even the vending machine hummed a little louder. A man in army dress uniform stood at the doorway to room 12. 3 silver stars caught the fluorescent light. He brought his right hand to his brow and held the salute to a surgeon in blood-speck scrubs. Somewhere a monitor kept time. Beep, beep, beep. 6 weeks earlier. The conference room at St. Gabriel Medical Center smelled like burnt coffee and antiseptic. The blinds were half drawn. A strip of cold morning sun lay across the long table. 15 residents lined the walls with paper cups balanced on knees, tablets glowing with vital signs and lab numbers. The clock read 6:20 a.m. Only the overhead lights were awake. Dr. Burke Halverson stood at the head of the table, silver hair combed tight, the kind of posture that made the air around him line up. He tapped the screen. An ultrasound of a gallbladder bloomed in gray. 46-year-old male. Right upper quadrant pain. Afebrile, routine candidate. Who wants it? Eyes dropped, coffee sipped, a cough. No one moved. Ava Calder sat in the back corner, hands flat on the table tablet in front of her. 2nd year on paper. 34 in years lived. Her scrub cap hid most of her hair. A wisp curled at her temple where the elastic pressed too hard. Grant Halverson said. Dr. Lila Grant looked up. Standard laparoscopic cholecystectomy, 4 ports. Identify the triangle, clip and cut. Textbook, Halverson said. He glanced toward the back. Calder. Add anything. Ava lifted her eyes. The cystic duct is slightly dilated. I would get an MRZP before we go in. Halverson's expression did not change. Based on what? Ultrasound shows no choledocholithiasis. The dilation pattern suggests intermittent obstruction. The angle at the junction is off. Could be a stone that did not show on this image. MRCP would clarify. Silence slid down the walls and settled in the corners. Lila's jaw set. Someone shifted a shoe on the tile. You have been here 6 weeks, Halverson said, voice even. Dr. Grant is a 3rd year. I have been doing this for 30. You think you see something we do not. Ava kept her hand still. I think the scan will confirm the safest approach. Halverson looked at the image as if it might answer for her. Then he nodded once. Fine. Dr. Calder, you take the case. Alone. Coffee paused midair. A chair squeaked. Lila's gaze dropped back to her tablet. Dismissed, Halverson said. The room emptied in a sweep of scrub fabric and quiet shoes. Ava stayed seated. She scrolled through labs, tapped open the prior ultrasound, pinched and zoomed. She closed the tablet and stood. As she adjusted her cap, the edge lifted just enough to show a faint mark behind her left ear. A nightbird cradling the staff of Asclepius. Ink no bigger than a postage stamp. Easy to miss unless you were looking. Sergeant Major Nate Colson had been passing the doorway. Security badge clipped to his belt. 52, shoulders like a doorframe. He stopped. His eyes flicked toward the tattoo, narrowed, then moved on. The pre-op bay was cool and smelled like chlorhexidine. Ava scrubbed at the sink and counted under her breath. 15 on fingers, 15 on palms, 15 on forearms. Water hissed, curved around her wrists and fell away. She watched it bead and slide. Her hands knew this rhythm better than her voice knew lyrics to any song. No attending walked in. No one was surprised. Routine cases often meant wide leashes. In the OR, the lights came up and made everything too bright to belong to a real problem. The anesthesiologist looked over the drape. Vitals are steady. He is yours. Ava nodded. She placed the first port, then the second. The camera found the landscape inside a human belly. Pearly tissue, a glint where fat parted. She moved with small decisions, none wasted. Retractor, she said. The scrub nurse handed it over without being asked for the size. Ava exposed Kalos triangle. Her scope ran along the duct. There. A shadow not quite shadow. A smooth edge where smooth should not be. I want the cholangiogram, she said. That is not on the plan, the nurse said, more surprised than resistant. It is now. The table slid, the C-arm came in, and the dye traced a river into the common bile duct. A tiny stop showed like a blink in a film reel. A bead sat right where it should not. She threaded the cold octoscope, watched the stone loom on the monitor. The tip of her instrument was steady as a held breath. Basket open. Capture. Withdraw. The pearl of trouble eased out and clinked into the tray. She irrigated until bile flowed clean. Close, she said. She chose interrupted sutures and placed them in a line so even it looked printed. Triple square knots, each one flat and tight, each one equal to its neighbor. The kind of discipline you could hear in the quiet when the instrument stopped clicking. 47 minutes had passed. The anesthesiologist glanced at the clock. You have done that before. Ava stripped her gloves. Training. He did not ask where. Above in the observation booth, a red light blinked on a recorder. Halverson leaned with his arms crossed, face unreadable. He rewound the footage and watched the moment she placed the retractor, the angle of her wrist, the economy of it. Lila stood a step back, eyes flicking from screen to Halverson's reflection. She did not speak. In the hallway outside the OR, Ava washed again and wrote post-op orders with her thumb moving quick across the glass. Diet progression, pain control, ambulate early. She pushed the biodisposal lid with her elbow and tossed the gloves. At the intersection, Nate Coulson waited in the island of shadow cast by a ceiling vent. His stance looked casual. His attention did not. When Ava's eyes met his, he gave one slow nod that felt like a key turning. She held his gaze for a heartbeat and moved on. The locker room vibrated with low talk. Lila stood at her locker, hair twisted into a ponytail. A second-year slouched on the bench scrolling. She pulled the scope like it was nothing he said, not a tremor. You cannot learn that from a video, Lila said, not looking up. Not like that. What then? She shut the locker door. The metal click sounded too loud. Reps. By noon, the rumor had already shed and grown new skin. The second year who called a duckstone no one else saw. The one Halverson tried to put in her place. The one who was right anyway. Ava ate a protein bar in 3 slow bites and drank black coffee that had gone cold while she stood. The break room window showed the parking structure and a slice of sky. Clouds slid behind the tower like slow ships. The door opened. Halverson stepped in without a cup. He did not sit. You were right about the duct. Yes, sir. How did you see it? The dilation was asymmetric. The angle at the junction was wrong by a few degrees. That is not something most second years notice. I review every frame. He studied her face as if it were a chart with something in the margins. The tattoo behind your ear. That a medical symbol. Yes. Where did you train? County General, she said. Residency. He waited. She did not add to it. He nodded as if the conversation had gone somewhere, even if the words had not. Keep up the work and follow protocol. He left. The air felt colder after the door closed. At 2:10 p.m., the assignment board updated. Ava's tablet buzzed. Appendectomy room 6. She changed into fresh scrubs that held the soft chemical smell of laundry and walked to pre-op. She moved past the hum of vents. A nurse's laugh clipped short the soft wheel squeal of a cart. Eli Morales lay on the bed with his right hand pressed to his abdomen. 19. Face the color of old paper. His knuckles were white against the rail. You are going to be fine, Ava said. This is one we do often. He nodded but did not loosen his grip. She reviewed his labs. White count up but not wild. Lactate 1 tick high. The CT labeled the appendix inflamed clean borders. Something in the image bothered her like a picture frame hanging 1 degree off. She leaned closer to Eli and breathed in. Under the antiseptic and plastic there was a faint, sour metal note that did not belong to a healthy gut. Hold sedation, she told the anesthesiologist. He looked at the clock. We are slotted. 2 minutes, Ava said. She stepped into the hallway and caught Dr. Theo McKinney at the sink. I think this is early peritonitis. The CT shows subtle stranding outside the appendix. His lactate is up. He smells like sepsis. McKinney scrolled on his phone. Vitals are within range for pre-op anxiety. They are borderline, Ava said. If it is ruptured and we start lap, we lose time. This is routine, he said. Proceed. She did not argue. She went back to Eli. In the OR, the scope slid in smooth and the view went crystal. The appendix filled the frame, then the frame shifted and a thin river of pus winked and then showed itself. Eli did not have time for debate. Convert, Ava said. Open. The scrub nurse paused. We do not have attending sign-off. We have a patient with pus in his belly, Ava said. Knife. The incision lengthened. Suction whispered. Irrigation poured. Fat and fascia parted. She worked fast. Not fast like nerves. Fast like a sequence you know by feel. She removed the ruptured appendix, debrided where tissue had gone gray, and set the line of triple square knots. Even. 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 The monitor tone settled on a steady rhythm that felt like a room choosing relief. In the gallery above, behind glass, Nate Coulson watched without breathing. His voice did not carry through the pain, but his mouth shaped two words anyway. Field surgery. The next morning at rounds, Halverson pulled up Eli's post-operative note. Perforated appendix, converted to open. Appropriate. He looked around the room. Dr. Calder made a correct call under pressure that imaging did not flag. A ripple of quiet moved across the residence. Ava kept her eyes on her tablet. That said, Halverson added conversions happen with attending present. In the future, you wait. If I had waited, Ava said he would have been worse. Halverson's jaw worked. That is not your determination. It was in the room, Ava said. Her voice did not rise. Calder, he said my office after rounds. A chair creaked, paper cups dented, no one looked at her. The meeting was quick and stayed polite on the surface, like ice that looks thin but holds. Questions about training, answers that did not travel far, a warning about protocol, a nod about results. When she left, she could feel the hallway air on her forearms like wind before a storm. At the scrub sink that afternoon, Lila appeared at Ava's shoulder. Steam ghosted up from the water. The stainless set, their reflections into a grainy mirror. Lila watched Ava's fingers move through the wash, watched the way each finger turned and each nail bed, saw the same attention as if they were instruments. Who taught you to tie those triple squares so they all look like twins? Lila asked, voice low. Ava met her eyes in the metal. Don't blink. The water ran. The monitor in the next room counted time. Beep, beep, beep. The scrub sink hissed. Steam curled up and vanished. Ava shut off the water and dried her hands with the stiff towel that scraped a little at the knuckles. The metal panel gave back a blurred twin with tired eyes and a mouth that never quite looked surprised. Her pager rattled on her waistband at 10:52. 2 quick pulses. She checked the message, then glanced toward the charge desk. The radio cracked with static that filled the hall. All units, Mascal alert. Training accident at Fort Carson. 6 inbound, 3 critical, ETA 8 minutes. The unit took one breath. Then everything moved. Hands found carts, gloves snapped. The big doors to the trauma bay rolled open and thumped against their stops. Someone killed the music on the speaker. The humming fluorescent lights felt louder. Dr. Burke Halverson stepped into the center of the room with his hands already in a fresh pair of gloves. He looked like a man who had been waiting for this moment and never wanted it. Grant, Trauma 1. Kowalski, Trauma 2. Calder, Trauma 3. Ava nodded. She did not argue for a different bay. She stripped into a disposable gown and felt the fabric cling to her wrists. The monitors chimed alive one by one. Beep, beep, beep. The sound layered until it felt like a metronome for the whole room. The first ambulance slid in and coughed out diesel. The paramedics shouted over the siren wash. Burn and blast injuries. 1 unresponsive, 2 with airway compromise, 1 ambulatory. They rolled the first gurney past her bay. Lila Grant lifted her chin and took the report without looking away from the patient. Her voice came out steady and lower than usual. Got it. Tube tray. Suction ready. She did not glance up as she spoke. She was already moving. The second gurney turned into Ava's bay. The young man on the stretcher had shrapnel stippled across his chest and upper arms like a storm of metal freckles. He was awake and trying not to show the fear in his face. Name, she said. Specialist Ryan Kane, ma'am. She watched the monitor while the paramedic rattled off vitals. 90/60, tachy at 110, no obvious arterial bleeding, breathing on his own. They had pressure dressings on the bigger cuts. The bandages were already pinking through. Ava snapped on a fresh pair of gloves and leaned over the wounds. She took the forceps and touched one fragment. The metal turned under the clamp with a dry squeak. The edge was not clean. It had a serrated texture that ate light. There was a faint smear of green paint on the underside that did not belong to any training kit the hospital used. What device, Ryan? Be specific. Decommissioned IED sim, he said. The training cadre said cold ordnance. We were running through a lane. The blast charge popped. I think something went sideways. Ava looked at the piece again. Her throat felt tight for a second, and then the feeling passed. She placed the fragment in a tray and set it under the lamp. The heat made a smell rise that did not belong to anything on a dummy. Old oil and hot iron. She did not blink. She worked through the surface wounds with a rhythm that made the nurse stop guessing and start anticipating. Saline, gauze, pressure, forceps. She kept her hand steady while her mind traced the path of the fragment just right of the sternum. The angle in, the way the rib cage widened, the way a small piece could ride a heartbeat and find soft tissue like it was following a map. She stepped out of the bay and found Halverson at the next bed with his hands inside a chest. He did not look up. "What?" "Real shrapnel," she said. "Not a simulation. The composition is wrong. There is a fragment near his right coastal margin that is tracking toward the pericardium. We are told the ordnance was decommissioned," he said. "Intake confirms. Handle his superficial injuries. If vitals change, escalate." "Vitals do not have to change for this to kill him," Ava said. "The fragment can migrate without warning." Halverson's eyes cut to her for one beat, hard and unreadable. "Manage your bay, Dr. Calder." She stood still for a second longer, then turned and went back to Ryan. The nurse had finished taping the last bandage. Ryan stared at the ceiling as if it might offer a steadier world to look at. "You are going to the surgical floor for observation," Ava said. "Full cardiac monitoring, chest x-rays every 4 hours, no exceptions." "That is a lot for surface wounds," the nurse said, in a voice that was trying to be light and did not quite get there. "It is necessary," Ava said. "Place the orders." The nurse nodded and typed. The keys clicked with small, quick sounds. Sergeant Major Nate Coulson stood in the doorway and did not enter. His shadow cut a shape on the floor tile that stayed still while the rest of the room moved. He watched Ava work for a quiet count of 10, then stepped in and planted himself at the side of the bed where he would not be in the way. He kept his voice low. "I know who you are, Major." Ava's hands paused over a dressing tape. The pause was short. She did not look up. Not anymore. Nate looked at the tray under the lamp. He did not touch it. Kandahar. After-action reports do not always tell the whole story, but they told enough. Ava smoothed the tape once. "Keep your voice down." He nodded and stepped back to the doorway. His presence did not move from the edges. They moved Ryan to a monitored room on the surgical floor. The triage nurse hung a bag of fluids. The telemetry tech placed sticky leads on his chest. The monitor drew green lines that climbed again and settled in an uneasy pattern. Beep, beep, beep. The sound in this room felt smaller and more personal. "You will hear this all afternoon," she said to Ryan. "It is not music, but it is honest." "I have had worse soundtracks," he said. He tried to smile. It did not stay long. She adjusted the bed so he could breathe without fighting the angle. She wrote orders with small letters that were easy to read and hard to misinterpret. She added a note about calling her directly for any change in heart rate, even if it was only a notch. She signed and double-checked the contact number. She handed the chart back. Her shift had been 16 hours already. She should have signed out and gone home. She did not. She went back to the break room and poured coffee that tasted like the pot had been cooked twice. The cup warmed her fingers and nothing else. She set the pager on the table where the light would hit it. It felt heavy for a small piece of plastic. The hospital moved around her. Gurneys muttered by with soft wheel squeals. A phlebotomist laughed once and then caught herself as if she had been too loud. The intercom coughed and announced a visitor name with the wrong vowel. The world held. Lila slid into the chair across from her without being invited. She had a smear of iodine at the cuff and a new crease at the corner of her mouth. "You were right about the duct, and Morales. People are talking." "People always talk," Ava said. Lila picked at a thread on her sleeve. "Are you going to tell me where you learned to tie knots like that?" Ava looked at her. The break room window showed the sky washed a pale blue. The mountains sat behind the city like a printed backdrop. "Practice," she said. "That is not a real answer." "It is the one you get," Ava said. She finished the coffee and felt the grit at the bottom. Lila tapped the table once with a knuckle. "All right." She stood. "I will be in the gallery." Ava nodded. Lila left. The door hinges made a sound like a whisper when they closed. At 2:47, the pager screamed. "Code blue, surgical floor, room 418. Ava was upright before the second beep. The chair legs scraped the linoleum. She grabbed the rail of the stairwell and took the steps in runs of 3. Her lungs reached for air that did not quite get there in time. She pushed through the door to the 4th floor and turned left. A nurse nearly collided with her with a crash cart, eyes wide, mouth open. The cart rattled against the door frame and then corrected. 418 stood open. The room pulsed with noise. The monitor was a high continuous tone. Hands moved everywhere at once. A respiratory therapist squeezed a bag. Dr. Theo McKinney had his stethoscope on Ryan's chest, and it looked like he was trying to listen to a secret he could not get close enough to hear. Ava saw the bulge below the sternum where there had not been one before. A small rise under the skin that lifted and fell with each breath. The skin there looked tight like plastic, stretched over a fruit that was too big for it. She moved to the bed and placed her fingertips lightly along the right costal margin. She felt the heartbeat through the rib. It felt muffled and far away, like it was trying to reach through a wall. The room seemed to narrow around the sound of the monitor. Beep, beep, then a long line that made the walls tilt. Ava looked at McKinney. He looked back with the admission of a man who had run out of the kind of answers the book gave him. She set her palm on Ryan's shoulder. Stay with me, Specialist Kane. His eyes were open and wild. He tried to form a word. Nothing came. Ava reached for the crash cart. The drawer handles bit cold into her fingertips. She pulled it close to the bed in one clean movement. The crash cart hit the bed and rattled. The room tightened around the sound on the monitor. A long, thin tone, then a stutter, then the tone again. He needs an emergency thoracotomy, Ava said. Or, Dr. McKinney said, we move now. He will not make the elevator, Ava said. Dr. Burke Halverson stepped in at the doorway, gloves on, eyes hard. Dr. Calder, you do not open a chest in a room like this. Ava held Ryan's stare for one beat. Stay with me. Do not blink. She pulled the sterile pack wide. Betadine bottle snapped. Amber ran in cold streaks over skin and hair. She gripped the scalpel. The handle felt heavier than it looked. Left chest, fourth intercostal space, she said. Knife. She cut one clean line between ribs. Skin parted. Muscle gave with a muted pop. Blood rose warm against her wrist. Suction, she said, and the nurse answered without words. The tip hummed. The field cleared. Rib spreader, she said. Metal teeth set and turned. The ribs opened a little, then a little more. The smell changed iron and heat, a breath that belonged to deep places. The pericardium sat swollen and too tight. It shone like wet paper stretched over a fist. Scalpel smaller, she said. She nicked the sack and stepped back half a thumb. Dark blood poured out and ran along the drape in a wide arc. The monitor's line broke and found beats again, slow, then steadier. Ryan's chest rose and fell in shallow waves. His eyes flickered. He caught on her voice like a rope. That is it, she said. Stay with me. She slipped 2 fingers into the opening and felt along the pericardium. The fragment sat caught at the edge like a thorn in a pocket. She pinched and eased it free. A small wedge of metal winked under the lamp. Scratched green paint. Rough serration. She let it drop into the tray. It hit with a sharp clink and lay there ugly and certain. Halverson had not moved from the doorway. His face was pale under the lights. His mouth was a straight line. Pericardial stitch, Ava said. 4-0 proline. The nurse's hands shook once before settling. Ava placed the first stitch with care. Triple square knot flat and tight. Then the second. Then the third. The line looked like it had been drawn with a ruler. The bleeding slowed to a sheen. Chest tube kit, she said. Right angle clamp. She tunneled, place secured. Air hissed. Fluid tracked. The monitor counted out a rhythm you could breathe to. Beep, beep, beep. She looked at the nurse. Call for blood work. Cross-match coag. 2 grams of cefazolin. Keep the line open. Dr. McKinney swallowed and found his voice. We close here or move? We move for formal closure and drains, Ava said. Prep a path. He is stable to travel now. Halverson stepped to the bed at last. He looked from the sutures to the fragment in the tray. He did not reach for either. Who taught you this? He asked. Ava turned her head toward him. She did not raise her voice. United States Army Medical Corps, Joint Special Operations Command, Major Ava Calder, retired. Serial number available on file. The room felt smaller after the words left her mouth. The respiratory therapist looked down at his shoes as if they were new. The nurse wiped her wrist with the back of her glove and left a streak of red that would not come off until much later. Lila Grant appeared in the doorway with her hairnet. Crooked eyes wide. She stopped when she saw the rib spreader, the pericardial stitches, the tray with the shard of metal that did not belong in a hospital room. She did not speak. Ava checked each suture with quick pressure and then covered the field. She placed her palm on Ryan's shoulder for a second. You did not go anywhere, she said. Good. Sergeant Margie Nate Colson stood to the side of the door, shadowed by the frame. He looked at Halverson and then at Ava. His nod was smaller this time, but it was there. Transport team, Ava said. Move on my count. The gurney locks released with a click. The wheels rolled. The room's noise softened as they pushed into the hall. The cooler air hit her face and smelled like disinfectant cut with something sweet from a nearby cart. They cleared the corner. The elevator at the end of the corridor chimed. The door slid open. A man in army dress green stepped out, 3 stars on his shoulder, graying hair trimmed close. He took in the chest dressing and the line of sutures, and the tray in Ava's hand as if all of it had names. "Where is my son?" he said. The corridor smelled like disinfectant and galvanized steel. The elevator door stood open behind the officer as if the building itself had stepped back to make room for him. "Where is my son?" he said. "Trauma recovery," Ava said. "He is stable for transfer to the OR." She tipped the tray so he could see the shard of metal. This came out of his pericardium. He looked at the fragment, then at the dressing across Ryan's chest, where a clean line of sutures ran like careful handwriting. His eyes changed when he saw the pattern. Triple squares. The distance was identical between knots. "Who closed his sack?" he said. "I did," Ava said. He stepped close enough that she could see the sun lines at the corners of his eyes. "Lieutenant General Arthur Kane, United States Army." He turned his head to Halverson for a heartbeat, then back to Ava, "Forward Operating Base Shirana. Night attack. You sewed my medics under generator light." Ava met his gaze without moving. "Yes, sir." He came to attention. He raised his hand and saluted. The white noise of the hallway dropped away. For a second, the only sound was the slow and regular beep from Ryan's monitor. "Thank you, Major," he said. Ava returned the salute. Her palm cut the air in a line without a shake. They moved again. The transport team took Ryan through the doors and down the hall. The general walked with them as far as the OR entrance and then stopped. He placed his hand once on his son's ankle above the blanket as if he could anchor him there by contact alone. Later, in a conference room with carpet that dulled footsteps, Ava sat in a chair and did not wait to be told to sit. The window showed a parking lot and a strip of sky that had gone the color of old tin. Meredith Shaw stood near the head of the table. Her tablet was clutched like a shield. "That procedure was unauthorized," she said. "You exposed us to unacceptable risk. If the press learns that a resident opened a chest at the bedside, we become a story no one wants." Sergeant Major. Nate Coulson stood by the door. His hands were behind his back. With respect, he said that was not reckless. It was standard field protocol when transport time becomes the risk. He looked at Meredith and did not look away. The kid is alive because she did not waste minutes. "This is not a battlefield," Meredith said. "Medicine does not stop at the ward door," Nate said. Dr. Burke Halverson rested his palms on the table. He had not sat down either. He looked at Ava. "I misjudged you," he said. "That is on me. Your calls were right. The duct, the appendix, the fragment, every time." Ava did not answer. Meredith's voice sharpened. "You did not disclose prior service on your application." "I disclosed what the law required," Ava said. "My record is sealed. I asked for that when I left." "Why?" Meredith said. "Because I wanted to work," Ava said. Silence held a moment. Halverson broke it. "You will not be punished for saving a life," he said. He looked at Meredith. "There is another way to play this." She waited. "We give her what she already acts like," Halverson said. "Senior trauma surgeon. Full privileges. Build a training program that teaches what she knows. We stop pretending she's here to shadow cases she could run in her sleep." Meredith stared at him, then at Ava. Her jaw tightened. "The board will ask about liability," she said. "Tell them the Army will back her," Halverson said. "Tell them a general saluted her in our hallway." Ava leaned her elbows on her knees. "3 conditions," she said. "Name them," Halverson said. "Veterans get a fair door," Ava said. "No penalties for gaps in a resume. Experience under fire counts as real hours." "Done," Halverson said. "Nate Coulson runs coordination," Ava said. "He understands both languages." Nate looked at her. He did not speak. "Done," Halverson said. "And my record stays sealed unless I open it," Ava said. "No press, no brochure, no parade." Meredith lowered her tablet an inch. "I can draft that," she said. Ava nodded once. Halverson straightened. "Then we start," he said. They gave her a space on the second floor that had been an unused telemetry ward. The smell of fresh paint sat under the older smell of old wax and corkboard. A week later, mannequins lay in the beds with chests that rose and fell and fluids that ran when told to run. The ceiling track lighting hummed. The timers on the wall clicked over seconds like a drummer counting in. Ava stood in the center of the room before sunrise and drew a box on the whiteboard around the words, "Pattern Recognition." Lila Grant came early and leaned in the doorway with a coffee she forgot to drink. A former Navy corpsman named Miguel Rodriguez showed up with a notebook and the kind of attention that does not drift. Others filed in and took positions by beds as if they had always belonged there. Ava triggered a scenario. 4 criticals, 1 needle, 10 minutes. The alarms layered into a fabric of sound. Lila moved, checked chose. Miguel covered the second bed, called for fluids, placed pressure. They worked fast without shouting. They missed one thing and learned it with a look that hurt. The mannequin stopped bleeding when told to stop. The lesson did not. After the first month, a chart on the wall in Halverson's office changed shape. Bars that tracked outcomes grew taller where they needed to and shorter where they should. 31% improvement in survival for the worst cases. 15% fewer complications. 8 minutes faster to definitive care. He slid a finger along the bars and did not hide the way his face softened. He found Ava that evening in the simulation lab coiling tubing with a care that made it look like rope. The room was quiet. Only the ventilation spoke. He set a folder on the table. It was thick paper that held the light differently from the rest. The seal at the top was familiar enough to shift the temperature in the room. "This came for you," he said. She looked at the title. Department of Defense, Office of Medical Readiness, National Trauma Integration Initiative. Her name rested under primary consultant. She touched the edge of the folder with her thumb. The paper rasped against her skin. Somewhere beyond the door, a monitor found its rhythm and kept it. Beep, beep, beep. By fall, the old telemetry ward had a new name stenciled on frosted glass. St. Gabriel Trauma Simulation Center. The paint smell had faded to the quiet scent of plastic and linen. The clocks on the wall ticked like teeth. The monitors in each bed waited with their green cursors living small lives on black screens. Ava stood at a podium in the main auditorium with the house lights low and the stage light warm on her face. 400 chairs were full. Residents in wrinkled coats, nurses with pens tucked behind ears, paramedics in navy shirts with their patches cleaned for the day. A row of uniforms near the back held posture like a line. On the screen behind her, a photo showed a field hospital with canvas walls and a generator cable curled like a snake across the ground. Floodlights threw hard edges on metal tables. There were shadows under eyes that did not belong to the present. Combat medicine and civilian trauma use the same rules, Ava said. The difference is everything surrounding the patient. The difference is time. She clicked. The screen filled with a list of small signs that always hid in plain sight. Asymmetry, angle shifts, smell when the air should smell like nothing. She did not read them out loud. She let the room look. You learn by seeing patterns, she said. You put enough cases into your head until your hands move when your mind is still catching up. You let the right things become automatic. Lila Grant stood at the side aisle with a notebook open and a pen she did not use. Miguel Rodriguez sat on the edge of his seat and forgot to blink for a page and a half. Ava clicked again. The slide changed to a single line of sutures across a chest. The triple squares sat in a row like a set of chords on sheet music. Flat, even, close enough to measure with a coin. There are decisions you will make where waiting looks polite and feels safe, Ava said. There are moments where you do not wait. You act and then build the rest around that act. She showed outcomes next. A bar chart that had been ink on paper a month ago and now was light. The room did not clap. The numbers did that work. 31% better survival for critical trauma, fewer complications, faster time to the knife that fixes the break. A photo filled the screen. A young woman with a seatbelt mark fading across her collarbone stood in a kitchen with a cake that had too much icing. Sarah Mitchell, Community Hospital in Ohio. Blunt chest injury, quiet vitals. An ER nurse from the first cohort had noticed the subtle signs and had pushed hard for a surgical call. Ava did not narrate the fight in that room. She showed the face of a patient who had reached another birthday. The lights rose. Questions started and stacked politely. How do you teach instinct? How do you write protocol for cases that do not fit paper? Ava answered in the same key she used in the lab. Repetition, pattern, clear words, and a refusal to give in to the tidy comfort of a perfect plan. She did not waste adjectives. The crowd thinned to a tide at the exits. People stood in the aisles and kept talking in knots that would flow back to wards and rigs. Lila came down the steps to the stage. You made them pay attention, Lila said. They did the work, Ava said. Lila smiled. Her eyes looked like they had slept less and cared more. Miguel joined them with a notebook held to his side as if it were a passport. A man in dress uniform stood in the front row. Lieutenant General Arthur Kane watched Ava with a look that balanced pride and the worry he never filed away. Specialist Ryan Kane stood beside him in a pressed shirt. He had color in his face and a scar that sat hidden under fabric. He moved with the careful ease of someone who had learned where his limits ended and began again. Ryan held out his hand. "Thank you, doctor." Ava took it. "You did the hard part," she said. "I was horizontal," he said. "You were the one standing." His mouth twisted. The humor made the air easier. General Kane stepped forward. He held a folder. The seal on the cover made a small change in the silence around them. "The department has authorized a 5-year funding line," he said. "They want the program in military hospitals stateside and forward. They would like you to lead the integration." Ava looked past him to the wall of photos that had gone up over the past weeks. Cohorts standing in scrubs with their arms around each other after nights that had taken everything and left them with something to give back. Patients who had sent pictures because someone asked. A board with names and dates in chalk that changed every week. Ava looked back at the general. "I work under medical autonomy," she said. "No interference in clinical calls." "You have it," he said. "Veterans in the pipeline receive priority consideration and real credit for field hours." "Approved," he said. "No access to my record unless I say otherwise." "Agreed," he said. Ava breathed in through her nose and let it go. "Then I accept," she said. The general smiled the way a soldier smiles when a plan is not just possible, but already moving. "Not, Major," he said. "Doctor," she said, "that is enough." He nodded. He and Ryan stepped back. Lila touched Ava's elbow once and then let go. Miguel said nothing and managed to say a lot. They walked together down the center aisle. Nate Colson waited near the exit with his arms folded and his shoulders set. He looked at the crowd as if counting who might need cover. "You opened a door," Nate said. "We opened it," Ava said. He grunted. He gave a single nod that had weight. They stepped into the corridor where the air felt cooler on the skin. The nightbird tattoo glinted once at the edge of Ava's hair when the overhead light struck just right. It went back to shadow as her cap settled. Her pager buzzed in a way everyone recognized. The tone for trauma layered over the regular beeps that lived here. Multi-vehicle collision, multiple critical inbound. The words were clean and held no commentary. Ava turned without speaking. Her shoes found grip on the floor that she knew by feel. Lila matched her stride. Miguel fell in behind and did not need to ask where. Nate took the side path that got there first. They pushed through the ER doors. The room warmed with bodies and breath. Diesel drifted under the antiseptic. The first gurney came in hot with a gait that meant the paramedics would not stop moving until they were told to. The monitor on bed 2 found a rhythm and held it. The one at bed 4 tripped into a skitter and waited for someone to take command. Ava pulled a gown off a hook and slipped into it. The paper tugged at her wrists. The gloves snapped and sealed. She stepped to the first bed and set her hand on a shoulder that shook. "You are here," she said. "Stay with me. Do not blink." The room answered with its sound. Beep, beep, beep. The line steadied. The knife found the right path. The sutures sat flat and even and close. Outside the doors, a siren rose and fell and then stopped. Inside the doors, a team moved in a language they had learned together. The work waited and did not wait. Ava leaned in and did it. Thank you so much for listening to today's story. If this story resonated with you or made you reflect, I'd love to hear your thoughts, so feel free to share them in the comments below. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you won't miss the next story.